welcome to The Way I See It with myself, Oguntola. I have been so inconsistent with my podcast. It's insane. It's definitely dropped off as a priority, which is a pity because I do really enjoy it. But if you have been following my podcast, you know that in the first series I discussed my book, 21 Running Chronicles, 21 Lessons I Learned from Running to Stop You from Ever Giving Up. And then in the second series, I decided to talk about artificial intelligence because I'm really interested in it. I'm a geek for it. And my doctorate is looking at the impact of artificial intelligence on filmmaking, production, and education. So I decided to step into this space to talk about it because I don't see a lot of people that look like me. Every time you see a panel on AI, or you see a mainly white male, and sometimes you might see some females, but very rarely do I see Black African women talking about artificial intelligence. And like we don't exist, and we do. And instead of complaining about it and saying, oh look, we're not in this space, I thought, well, why don't I step into this space? Why am I waiting for someone else to do it, right? And so I am in this space. And my interest is artificial intelligence in the creative space, especially filmmaking, because I'm a filmmaker. So today's episode, and this is the fourth one I think that I have done on artificial intelligence, so do look for the other ones on my YouTube channel. Now, so in today's episode, I am talking about the confusion or the lack of guidance that exists around generative AI, right? Around AI and creativity. And if you want the full discussion, it's on my blog, nanaooguntola.me. Go to my blog and you will see it there. And it's entitled The AI Creative Sector Conundrum, a Government on Shore. So the reason I decided to talk about this and write about this in the first place is that I realized that every time you wake up in the morning, there is like a headline about how some creatives are are going to the government and protesting the use of their content or their copyrighted works by AI developers. And then you wake up another morning and it's the AI developers saying, well, government is not allowing them to be as free with people's work as they would like to be. And they're complaining about not having freedom to use the work unhindered. And then the government is, on the other hand, they're saying, well, you know what, we are trying to do the best for each side of the spectrum. And I just thought, you know what, why are we having this conversation in public? Like, why is it that all three sides of this discussion are talking outwards? They're talking to the public, they're talking in the media, they're complaining. Why aren't they inward facing? Why isn't the government sitting down at the table with the creatives and the developers and coming up with a solution that would suit everybody? The developers are obviously calling for the use of creative content without having to pay for it, really is the bottom line. They want to use it freely, they want access to it to train their models. And one of the kind of legal terms they're using, because obviously creatives would say this is copyrighted material, this is our content. But what the developers are saying is that, well, we want to use your content, and we're going to use the law around fair use, which is in copyright law. And fair use in copyright law is where you can use someone's work without paying them for it, so long as it's for research or for study, or you're using it in the paper and so on. So that's what the angle that the developers are using in order to use people's work. But the writers are saying, well, you know what, this is beyond fair use. You are making money from this, so we want you to compensate us because you are big multi-billion businesses. So that's the conflict that's going on. And we've had writers in America, some have gone on strike before already. I think we've had 400 creatives went, protested, wrote to the White House to protest against developers. And then we have the developers as well protesting. First of all, there's just something I would like to draw your attention to, and it's a concept or an idea that's been brought to my attention by an author called Hai Kyung Lee, right? And he's saying that actually, with all this fuss going about, around creativity and AI, that actually AI is responsible for humanizing creativity. He's saying that the creative sector, for example, is something that was defined. The creative industries was a word or term that was defined during Tony Blair's government, and it's about the commercialization of creative output, right? So it's an industry. And he's saying that that idea of commercializing IP, creative output, is dehumanizing. It separates the person, the person from his creativity or from her creativity. It's dehumanizing. It's all about money. It's about how you create money rather than how you express yourself, let's say, creatively, or how you show up creativity, how you creatively, or how you create, right? He's saying that the idea that what you make is to be sold actually dehumanizes the creative concept, idea, output, etc. And he's saying that actually we are now reconnecting creativity and our humanity, right? And he says that this is forced by the fact that AI is now in the mix, right? Trying to kind of be creative or use our creativity. And he's saying that because we are having to discuss AI and its role in creativity, we are having to now humanize creativity, reconnect creativity to human beings as something that's innate to us, that is part of us. And he's saying that that is actually something that AI has done, humanize creativity. And I thought, I know that that's an aside, but I just thought that that's a really interesting concept that, we can investigate, you can investigate, discuss, let me know what you think. In any case, so that's the irony of what he's saying, that actually AI is the one that's humanizing creativity, right? Well, what's interesting is that 2 days after this letter was written to the White House, Gen 3 Runway signed a deal with Lionsgate to buy all their content to be trained, on their models, right? And then also HarperCollins has got into a contract with another developer to provide them with all their books. So there is a possibility of these conversations taking place where producers and owners of IP are able to generate further income, right? And that's interesting because they are the owners. It does not necessarily mean that the original creator of, say, the book gets any money unless it's in their contract that they continue to get royalties, right? Otherwise, the money goes to the studio, which is something that we see now anyway, right? That's the creative sector. If your work goes to the studio and the studio buys it, they own it, and however they sell it is how they sell it, and AI has nothing to do with that. But if we're looking at creatives whose works are independently produced, which is a large number of creatives, then I think that there is a case for looking at how they should be compensated. So Google and AI and OpenAI and so on are saying, look, we are using the law around fair use to make use of these works, and we don't think that we need to pay for it, right? And they're saying that by wanting further laws and guidance on how they use people's creative output, it's delaying innovation, it's slowing them down. It means they can't innovate fast enough, and other people might have access, like, China might have access to their work, because we know how the United States are. They want to be the superpower, so obviously that will kind of like, garner favor, right, with those who want to world dominate. And one of the things that OpenAI is also using as a basis or a way of defending, using content without payment is by using the term freedom to learn. They have a freedom to learn, which gives them access to other people's content. The issue, though, is not that they don't have freedom to learn and that there's not free use. It's just that they are actually making money from the content that they are using. So, for me, I think that government should come to the table with developers and creatives and find a way forward, define a way forward. I looked at a paper. I think it's on my blog anyway, even if I have not done a video on it. It's on my blog, where the Council of Europe is talking about how the government and all stakeholders need to come to the table to look at rules and regulations and how this is managed, how the whole use of AI is managed well to the benefit of all stakeholders. And that is so key again here. Or everybody needs to be at the table instead of talking to the newspapers and with sensationalized headlines and sound bites and things like that. You need to come together to talk. And in my paper, in my blog, you'll see I talk about how Baroness Kidron in the House of Lords, who's very central to issues and discussions around AI in the United Kingdom. She's also calling for governments and developers and creatives to come to the table, and that remains key. It has to be that way. I have 3 suggestions basically. First, all stakeholders need to come to the table. They need to be talking to each other. The UK government has called for it. The EU has called for it. They all need to come to the table in order to create a solution which is hopefully a win-win for everybody. At the end of the day, if OpenAI or Google or all of these big AI developers are making money from someone else's creativity, then obviously that person needs to be paid. And the thing about it is, when these AI tools go out or LLMs go out and they farm content, there is a directory. You know where that content is coming from. So you have a database of where this content is coming from. So when it's used, obviously you can then say, this is what we're going to pay the original owner, 10p, 5p. It's almost like the British Library, right? It's a reference library. So the books are in there. So you make a demand on the books and you go in and you pick up the book you want to use, and then the British Library pays the author for the book, that's their book that someone used. And I think that that's the same concept that needs to be applied to AI developers. They have a database, they have a reference list of where content is coming from. And if at any time that content is drawn on, they must have some kind of system of remuneration to the original owner of that content. It sounds like it's difficult, but it's not difficult if they wanted to do it. It's not difficult. They have a back end and they can do it. That's the one thing. In fact, that's the second thing. The first thing is that they come together. The second thing, they need to develop a compensation scheme based on like a data library or reference library, where when someone uses someone's content, the algorithms or the AI, whatever it is that you're using, is able to identify the source and make sure that they get some kind of payment, right? The third thing I'd say is the deal between Lionsgate and Runway making agreements is an indication that agreements can be met by organizations willing to be fair, right? So they can talk to each other, which means that a lot of the protests by creatives, it's really by independent creatives, because if it's studio owned, then those discussions can be had, isn't it? So it's really about the smaller ones. And obviously the final thing I'd say is that the deal did not require independent actors or creatives input or decision making in the sale by the studios, right? These were just simply sold off because they own the IP at the end of the day, right? They own the IP at the end of the day. So in conclusion, I'd say that these debates and arguments, they should not be played out in public, and they should not be sensationalized. I think that they should come to the table, because what happened, this public bickering every day you open the paper, it just leaves the generative AI landscape unprotected, because developers continue to use creative content as they wish. It's disheveled, it looks really confusing, it's unprotected, artists are unprotected, it's open to misinterpretation, and it looks rudderless. There is no one at the helm, and everybody it's like the wild west, and nobody seems to be providing the guidance that's required, because no one's talking. So when the government goes and says they're creating guidelines, then the developers say they don't want to abide by them. When the government say this, they're providing guidelines, then the creatives say, well, the government is not being fair to them. So why don't you just come together and work this out so that there is order, there is structure, there's guidance, there's confidence in the sector, and innovation can continue, and we can continue to enjoy AI outputs or Gen AI outputs, and we can continue to innovate, we can continue to create. So I think very, very importantly is coming around the table. Coming around the table, having a discussion is what is going to sort this out. Otherwise, there's just no guidance. And that is so necessary, I think, to reduce trepidation, fear. People are worried about bias and copyright law and so on and so forth. So unless the people who are responsible come to the table and create something that's clear, people are just going to continue being confused about what to do and how they use it and should they use it and things like that. So that was what I wanted to talk about today on the way I see it. The need for policy around generative AI. I mean, there's a need for policy around all kinds of things regarding AI, but for me, I just wanted to focus today on generative AI, the need for guidance, the need for rules, the need for laws, the need to make sure that everybody's at the table and that there's fairness, that creators feel that they are being compensated for their work, and the AI developers also know and feel that they have a right to the content that they're using because they're paying for it, right? That's what's going to make it fair. So hopefully the government gets to the table and sorts this out so that the sector can move forward. Well, thank you for joining me. I look forward to your comments. What do you think is possible? What do you think should be done? What are your ideas on how generative AI developers, creatives, come to some kind of conclusion or some kind of agreement where there's less of this conflict that we see in the media. All right, well, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time on The Way I See It. You take care. Bye.